Welcome to the Free Your Spirit podcast. My name is Louise Wilson. I'm a mystic, healer, entrepreneur, and business coach, and I am obsessed with helping you open up the lines of communication with your spirit so that you can receive the wisdom, the guidance, the clarity, and confidence you need to reach your big goals and dreams. Hey there, folks, and welcome to the Free Your Spirit podcast. In this week's episode, I actually have a wonderful guest joining us, Shirin Hedayati. And Shirin is an energy healer and a life coach, but she also has had a very interesting journey to reach this destination in finding her soul's purpose. This is more of what we're actually going to be diving into in this week's podcast episode. We're actually going to be exploring life purpose and how we find that. And it's different for so many of us. And I feel that as we sort of turn the page on 2021, this is such a wonderful time for us to just reflect upon where we're at and have we reached our purpose? Are we doing what we love? Have we found what our soul's calling is? So I'm really excited to have Shirin here on the podcast episode because we share a passion and love of all things spiritual. We sort of speak the same language in that sense that we're physical beings. We have a spirit, but we're living in a physical body. And I wanted Shirin to also share with us her journey to finding her purpose. She's going to give you some background to her previous life before becoming an energy healer and just exactly how she was able to find her purpose. So let's dive right in and welcome Shirin.
Hello, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, right on. Well, Shirin, I kind of alluded to it at the beginning of the podcast episode because you have had, I think, in a sense, two lifetimes, if you will. Forgive me if I'm paraphrasing it too simplistically, but would you like to share a little bit more with viewers, your own journey to finding your purpose and your deeper calling in life?
Sure. So I will start from just a little background. Basically, my family immigrated to United States when I was 16. And at that point, I had to get really serious and figure out what I want to do. Because the funds were kind of tight and you have a lot to kind of do at the same time, so you got to focus and move forward. And at that point I think it was challenging, and I went ahead and followed the sort of advice of my sister, who's already a dentist and was living in Iran. So I thought, okay, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. She says that's a good field, so I'm going to do it, because of the whole pressure of succeeding in something that could make my family proud and bring forth a profession that I could support, myself, family, that kind of thing. So it started like that, and it's beautiful, and many of us may do it in that way. But eventually there was this nudging kind of voice inside of me that was sort of saying, well, is there anything else? Or rather, I should say, one of the ways it came about is I started criticizing, like my ex-husband now. I would start criticizing how he's being. I kind of look outside of myself for my happiness. Well, if I'm not happy, it's his responsibility. If I'm not happy, something's going wrong outside of me. And so it wasn't till really the first awakening for me that something needs to happen is when I was having this massive depression of, okay, I have all these wonderful things that we have in our lives, my practice at the time, my marriage, my beautiful kids, and yet I was still kind of unhappy. And then I don't know if anyone relates to this, but then you feel ashamed to actually admit that, because how dare you think that something is missing when you have all these wonderful things. So that conflict really started this emotional turmoil inside, and I had to do something. I just didn't know what, And so, of course, there's some therapy people can reach out, but we're talking about 20 plus years ago. And by chance, I came upon the lady who was doing massages for me to physically relieve my tension. Lo and behold, she was actually doing healing at the same time. So I learned a lot. Every session was talking, talking, talking. I wasn't falling asleep in a massage session. And so that's where it kind of ignited my passion for, wow, there's this way to feel better. So I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I think by exploring these different ways, especially energy healing, and it came very naturally to me because when you're in medical field or dental field, it's a form of healing. So it came naturally to me, and that was really the first time. So I think there's more I can share, but that was really the first time together with a beautiful class I took, because my dear ex-husband, who's a friend now, obviously didn't want me to suffer, but he was the one who told me, hey, there's a great class offered in the community center. It's called Painting from the Heart. He actually found that
Oh,
class and I took it. And I have to tell you, there was meditation involved, something I hadn't done. So the teacher kind of started us with a meditation and exercise of rooting your energy into the earth. I hadn't done that, and I loved watercolor, and that's what she was teaching in the form of mandalas. And I remember that was another huge moment for me where I could not stop my tears from falling after she did meditation. And I really probably had some energetic release. Didn't know it at the time,
yes.
but that really shook me up to the point where I realized, wow, this creativity has been shut down in me for years. This part of myself that could be more expressive and not just intellectually creating, but emotionally and create. And so that was another one. So I've had really it built up through moments and experiences that kind of led to where I am today. But those initial two things were really huge just to wake me up to, wow,
It's
so if I'm
so interesting.
unhappy, there's something I can do about it.
Exactly. There's so many things that you've touched upon there that I think maybe we could dive into those, which would be very interesting, I think, for our listeners and our viewers. But I think if I just kind of run through them, but I think one thing that you mentioned was that I think I recall you saying something about there being this other voice that was telling you that there's something more. And I don't know if any of our listeners, people that are here that have felt this, that there's this sort of overwhelming sense, that you're doing what you're doing, but it isn't, there's something more for you to do or something more for you to experience in life. And I think this is really a classic sign that there's that deeper purpose that is waiting to be unlocked. When maybe what that is, maybe you already know that it's viewers, you may know that what it is that you want to do, or you may not know. But I think the power of leaning into that intuition, like Shirin was sharing how you tried different things, and just in that process of trying these new things, you could see all these other doors opening up and an awareness sort of expanding, and I think
Beautiful.
as we take action on that, it helps to
Mhm.
allow the purpose to unfold. I love too how you shared about, because I think this is something that I've been guilty of, in my life, where if I feel frustrated or I'm not where I feel I want to be, or that I can look outside of myself instead of seeing that it's on me to find my happiness, find that sense of purpose and peace. I think within ourselves. I was just, relating that to where you were saying about your relationship with your husband and how you were feeling frustrated, right? But it was more to do with what you were feeling inside, I guess, is what you were saying.
Yeah, I love that because over the years, it's taken me 20 plus years to be in a place where I can look back and really understand that some of us come into this world, I mean, depends. I don't know how your audiences come across different backgrounds. So I don't know if I feel that your audience believes in past lives. So I would have to say there are times where, I was very critical, and and many of us can be critical of ourselves and people around us. And I was critical of him because he really just wanted to get his work done at the office and come and just be just relaxing and really not interested in expanding, his knowledge in other areas. And I used to not like that. But then I don't know where I got this information, but if we do have past lives, there are times where we come to do some more work, and it may put us through some trauma and dramas. And there are times you come and that's all that you are there to do. It's like maybe you did a lot of hard work in the past life, and now you just want to be and not, hustle. So I think it really helped me to come to a peaceful place with that, and realizing that, oh, okay, we're not all the same, but at the same time, if my desire and my inner being or higher self is calling to me to come forward and really explore, there's more in this lifetime that I want to dive into, let's follow it, and let's get rid of
Yeah.
fear and self-doubt somehow, because I think that really stops us.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that I'd like to sort of dive into too here, Shirin, is that oftentimes I think we can find our purpose. Some people are very blessed, and they maybe know at a very young age what it is they want to do, and then they follow through and do that. But I think probably maybe for the vast majority of us, we may struggle with settling into something that really is our deeper purpose and calling. And I think that one of the challenges that we all face, I know I faced this in the education system. The education system didn't necessarily work for me, but I think when we're particularly good at something, we can find ourselves being railroaded or being that pathway kind of unfolding. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that could be the purpose. But if you love it, perhaps it is. But I think for me, I struggled for many years trying to figure out what it was that I was supposed to be doing. And I think when things really, really began to unfold for me was the more I listened to my intuition. And every single thing that I've done in my life, and I'm sure this is the same for most people, well, I think everybody, it's all leading towards something. It's just a question of which directions we choose to take, what part of ourselves that we listen to. And I think the more that I really listened to my intuition versus my conscious mind that was really trying to keep me safe, do the safe things, listening to my intuition really helped me get me on track. And sometimes some of the things I would do would seem very wild and crazy, but I just had to do them. And they would eventually, well, they brought me to coaching, which I started this probably 11, 12 years ago, and just continuing to follow that joy and passion that I feel for the work that I do. And I think the bottom line is, I don't know how you feel about this too, Shirin, and our listeners, but if you're waking up every day, you love what you do, you feel a deep sense of purpose, passion, all of the things, then you've nailed it, right? Like you've nailed it, I would say.
Sure. And I like how you said some people just know innately what they want to be. And I've learned to really welcome different modalities. So I do, if there is a great astrologer who knows how to read the astrology, I've learned that, there are people that, with the 12 houses of
Yes.
in our, planet and what have you. I mean, there could be, there's different characteristics associated with that. For instance, my own sister who loves dentistry and has still practicing, she knew at the age 8 she wanted to be a dentist, so
Wow.
she knew it. And so when I was looking to kind of, what do I do? She was able to help me, kind of guide me, and which I have to tell you, initially, when I wasn't feeling happy, I probably even blamed her, to be honest, oh my gosh, she got me into dentistry. I'm not happy with doing it, And it took me a few years to really tell her I appreciated her, because obviously I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was plucked from my, from my home to come here for a better life, and really hadn't spent the time to discover myself, let alone really know what I was going to do. So I told her that. I said, I'm so happy that I followed your recommendation, and it brought me wonderful things, opportunities to dive into this other stuff I like to do. So we find our way somehow, you know?
Yes, we do. And is it fair to say, I guess even just from the dentistry perspective, that you have sort of more in terms of understanding the body and the whole that work perhaps does help you in your healing work?
Yes, that's so true, because I had to study so much anatomy and physiology, where really actually helps me be able to see, to some level. Yeah, well said.
So I think, I think we are like, I feel, I truly believe that every stage in our sort of evolution and journey through life all has a purpose. And I think it's just, we can get there sooner, later, whatever it is. But I think the more that we listen to the voice of intuition and follow that, it can help us become more focused and get us powerfully on track. Because I remember Shirin and I were talking just before we hopped onto the podcast, and Shirin shared something about her. It's like this pivotal moment, sort of this turning point in her life that really was quite a defining moment for you, Shirin, when you realized, is this it? Would you like to share more with our listeners and viewers about that? Because I really feel that this is oftentimes what happens when we aren't on path or
Mm.
on track. Eventually, if we don't listen
Oh,
to our intuition, then we might have something will happen to really that big wake up call. Would you speak
yeah,
more to that?
absolutely.
Just to Sharon, like if you prior to that, if you were able to maybe share, did you get these nudges before that there was something more, and then it was like this massive event? Do you
Yeah,
know how it all happened?
yeah, I think, as I was saying, it just depends on a personality as well. You know, I think some people take chances, and some people can just make changes very quickly, and there are times, there's some people that they think about it, they plan, they're like, look at the positive and the negative. And I feel like I have been more like that. I get to kind of be sure of my decisions when so basically, I wanted to sell my dental practice and move on to focus on energy healing and coaching and all of that. But it took me years just to move on, you know, and sell it. So my ex-husband and I practiced together, and the idea was I can sell the practice to him and move on to my journey. But I wasn't doing it, and I can't tell you exactly why. It was more like, okay, the right time will come and all of that. So nearly a few years went by, and this is when I've already done a lot of work in healing myself and taking classes and trainings and all of that. So I was still a little bit stumped as what's going on, what's holding me back. And one day I came home real tired. I think this is the one you're recalling for my story. I came home and I was really excited to come home, had a good day. And then I realized my house was broken into. So I wasn't supposed to walk in, because the police had said, don't go. People have ransacked your house. You need to stay put. But I didn't believe it. I was like, oh, no. And I walked in, and literally every room I moved through, my body started shaking, because they had done more and more damage, and they had taken what I thought was valuables, the jewelry. And really, I was starting to panic at that point. And all of a sudden, the one thing, and it's interesting how we think these thoughts, but I saw a box that contained my children's. They had some heirlooms given to them with grandparents, and that box was ripped open, and I started screaming, and just was hysterical. So in the middle of all this, I didn't want anybody to come to help us. I was really upset, and my sister comes, and we go to one of the rooms, and we're sitting there, and she sits next to me and trying to calm me down, and I was just furious. And I look up, and I see a picture of myself, like maybe 2 years old, just this picture sitting right up on the shelf, just looking back at me, and just with this longing, like,
Wow.
come on and play, like, what are we doing? And I just turned to my sister, and I said, you know what? I'm going to sell my dental practice. I'm done. This is not working for me. And I just was so certain, even the years it took me to get to that. But there was this realization that, there is a reason I'm here, and I got to get to it. And I can't just pretend like it doesn't matter, because what I thought mattered was gone, like your wealth or your whatever, your heirlooms, it was gone. So yeah, that was to me one of the most traumatic events in my life. But the gift it brought me was this clarity, like, it doesn't matter. What am I doing this work only to pay the bills? I love my patients, but there's this other thing calling to me. So do I just never go there, or, what? And I have to tell you, when you make changes like that, people closest to you might be very surprised. My beautiful sister listed all kinds of reasons why I shouldn't sell my practice, and that, I'm going to go through some difficulties, and like, I can tell you, she rattled off like 10 things. I didn't care. I was like, no way, this is a done deal. And so that really, it took me 6 months after that to do all the paperwork and sell the practice. I don't recommend it.
Story. That's so powerful. Well, like you say, and I think what's really interesting, and this may land and resonate for our listeners and our viewers, is that, we all sort of like process in different ways. Some people can act really fast, other people it takes time. But what's really, I guess, when we have those pivotal turning points and events, I think maybe that is at the point in our lives where it's like, it's actually time now. It might not have been time before because there was this processing that had to happen, but actually right now it's time. So it's like, as you say, what I loved in what you said was seeing the gift in the transformation that, that happened for you as a result of this really, really challenging event. And I got, as you were recounting it, I was getting like goosebumps, because it just felt so powerful, in so many ways. I know, thank you for sharing that, Shirin. I know for me, my previous lifetime before doing the coaching, I actually had a beautiful retail store here, and it's in a remote location. It was a wonderful, wonderful store. I loved it because for me it was about creating space. A lot of my clients and customers were women, and I sold all Canadian made products. And I was fulfilling my deeper purpose on many levels, because I was working with women, I was supporting female entrepreneurs. And but as I started to do my training and coaching, I remember one day when I actually started to dig deeper. And I think this is another thing that's very powerful for our listeners and viewers to do if you're at that point where you're trying to figure out what your purpose is to have real clarity on what you value most. I think this is huge. And when I started to do that deep work to discover that, the number one thing I found was freedom was my core value, and it's never changed. Freedom is my top value. And what I discovered was that my retail store, having a bricks and mortar retail store, doesn't give you freedom. It's like the complete opposite. And what's so interesting, Shirin, is that, and I think this is going to lead more into, the work that you do as a healer and energy work, is that once I understood freedom was my number one core value, and that having this retail store, which I loved, my clients loved it, every time I had a shift to go to fulfill in the store, I started to feel unwell. And my body was it was almost like my body had caught up. And it was like on a spiritual soul level, I knew this wasn't my deeper purpose. It fulfilled a lot of, checks in the boxes, but it wasn't it.
Mhm.
And so physically, I started to feel unwell. And I think this is something, when we're not, I realized I was blessed because somebody came along who really wanted to take over that role as the manager of the store. And I was able to hire a manager, and it allowed me to transition into my coaching work. But I think if I hadn't have made that decision, then I sort of wonder, 2, 3 years down the line, whether I might have had some kind of more health issues starting to kick in. So I wonder if this is sort of like a great segue into how our body is impacted by the stress that we might feel, or the unhappiness we might feel about just generally in life or purpose or whatever it is. I don't know if you wanted to dive a little bit more into that from the sort of
Yeah,
physical
I mean,
perspective.
for sure. And I have to tell you, I follow what I preach. So I have my own healer, and I have worked with this. I've had different healers and teachers and all of that, because I think we're all so connected, and to have support and not feel alone when you're on a journey is so important. And I know that a couple of times, even recently, so when you work with someone for many years, they can see where you started and where you are now. And it's beautiful reflection, because I have been told that if I hadn't moved on and changed my situation, I could have come down with more serious health issues, and and I love Louise Hay. I think we have that in common as well. Like, I totally love how she brought this attention to what our belief systems and what goes through our mind constantly can create disease in our body. Because so our body is listening. I feel like it's listening to everything that we say and everything other people say. And a lot of our thinking is quiet. We just, we could be like taking on so much stress and tension just from worry, from fear, from self-doubt, so much. And so I truly believe that if I didn't do something and find another passion, which was calling to me in an indirect way through the massage therapist, then through me wanting to learn more about it and realizing I really love doing it, and just connecting the dots later, right? So you look back and you connect the dots and you say, oh my gosh, I had to do that so I can do this. And so I really believe that if we do not listen to ourselves and to our intuition and to our living guides, because I totally believe that we also have people in our lives that are helping us. Maybe they don't even know it, right? But they are significant in our journey. And when we start listening and paying attention, then we kind of move through things a lot easier and quicker. But when we don't, then the noise gets louder, then the 2x4 hits, across the head, metaphorically. Could be an accident, could be a serious illness diagnosed. And then we're like, well, what am I missing? I don't know if I answered your question, but I went that direction because
I mean, I know that for me it was quite profound, because it took me a while to make the connection, to notice that, oh, it's my shift tomorrow and I'm not feeling well tonight, but it started to be very consistent. And at that time I'd had somebody approach me, and she was working just doing some shifts, but she really wanted to do more. And I realized, okay, now it's time. And I listened to my body. My body I'd already made the connection, I guess, spiritually, consciously, freedom, and how my business wasn't giving me the freedom that I needed. And then physically I was feeling it in my body. And then it was a point, okay, taking action to kind of to shift it, to move more in the direction that I wanted to go. But it's tough, right? It's not always an easy transition. And I think sometimes, over the course of my life, I've had to have pretty big wake-up calls before I was willing to kind of, take the action that I wanted to take. or needed to take rather. But it's been wonderful to have you here, Shirin, and to dive more deeply, just, to talk, I think, particularly at this time of year, as we sort of turn the chapter on 2021 and moving into 2022, if there's things that we want to shift or change, it's a great time for reflection. It's a great time for us to do that. Are there any things sort of in closing, Shirin, just around, in your experience about, finally finding your purpose, tips that you would want to share with our listeners and viewers about what helped you, just as a closing remark?
Yes, thanks for asking that, because I feel where I'm sitting now, if I knew that finding my purpose could be fun, if I sat and really thought of it as this exciting journey right off the bat, instead of when I first started, I was so like upset that what am I doing? Am I in the wrong field? I was beating myself up so much that why am I not doing that? If this is not it, what is it? And just this anxiety that I was self-creating. And I think what I would say is, let's have fun with it. I know I've done one of your workshops, and it's fun. So when you get to do a creative work or experiential work where it really releases your inner voice in a fun way, it's really great to follow that. And instead of really beating ourselves up and saying, I don't know, oh my God, it's getting too late. And I think that's something I would have done differently, and said, well, it's not too late. You can do it at any time, and it's not life and death, but it can be a fun thing. And to also say what you mentioned about freedom, that's one of the three things, when you listen to, Abraham Hicks, she always says that we're in the physical body for three things: for growth, freedom, and joy. And by golly, I'm focusing on joy these days. It's like, bring it on. I want more of that, because we've done plenty of growth. And she always says we're so free, we can choose bondage. So I'm like, bondage means working at the wrong thing, because you're free to do it, wrong field. But hello to joy for 2022.
Oh, I love that. I love that, Shirin. That's just fantastic. And I think too, like, if I was to add, for me, I think that what's so interesting as I look back, like, I really do feel, for me, I am in my purpose and deeper calling. And although it took me a good number of decades to get here, I know that every single thing that I've done right up until this point has really helped me to do what I'm doing, even better. I think that they're all sort of part learnings and, along the way in the journey. That's something really important for us to acknowledge. And for me, I think it's about listening to the voice of intuition, the voice of soul. Like, if we feel there's this something missing, then there's a little bit more exploration and work to be done. And I loved, you mentioned about the creative workshop that I run. And what I love particularly about that is that it's clarity now, is that it just allows a channeling, if you will, for that voice really to finally like have expression, and to be able to see it in a sort of physical form. So, and I think that's the goal ultimately, leaning more and more, anybody in my world, and I think for you too, Shirin, it is really about just leaning into that and being able to listen to it and follow its powerful guidance, because it will get you where you want to go.
Well said.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, Shirin, for joining us on the podcast. I'm so thrilled that we were able to bring you on. I know you have a busy schedule. I really hope that you can come back to the Free Your Spirit podcast and talk more, in another episode, just about the energy, the really important, powerful energy work that you do. I know listeners and viewers would love to hear more about that. But in the meantime, Shirin, can you share with our listeners and viewers, how they can find you to find out more about what you do?
Sure, several ways. There is a Facebook page, Dr. Shirin Hedayati at Facebook, that I share a lot of ideas and positive quotes there. And drshirin is my email. So if anybody has any question, there's also soulconnectionmastery.com that introduces folks to, the power of our soul essence, and some work I do with that. But in the future, which I'm really excited, is a program coming up. We'll talk about it when you have me back, but I'm really excited to help people who are interested learn about their energetic body and the amazing power we gain when we know that we're more than physical. And so that's coming up in the future. So yeah, but thanks for letting me share. I'm looking forward to keep going and just, I believe yourself included, part of our journey is to make the world a better place by bringing more light and love into it. And I really appreciate you for doing that.
Oh, thank you, Shirin. Thank you. That's lovely. Right on. Well, we will also include your contact details in the show notes. And I know that I think that the program I think that you have coming up, and when you next come onto the podcast, we can dive more into that. But that's for busy professionals, would you say? Is that who you work with predominantly? Yeah.
Yes.
That are experienced burnout.
Right. I feel that, something I know a thing or two about, the burnout professional who know they deserve more. So it's be my pleasure to, help folks going through that realize that that's not the end of it all. We can bounce back. We can create the life we want. And it doesn't have to be hard and complicated. So that's my goal.
Wow. Beautiful. Well, thank you again, Shirin, for being here. And thank you to our listeners and our viewers for joining us and staying till the end. And we shall see you in the next episode. Bye for now.
Thank you, everyone.
Now, this opportunity to join the Clarity Now Masterclass for just $97 is only available for a limited time. So check out the special link around this video to snag your seat. And finally, if you aren't already following me on social media, come soak up the extra inspiration on Instagram by following me at Sunshine Louise Wilson, or by visiting my Facebook page at Louise Wilson Clarity Coach. Alrighty then, folks, I'm sending a blanket of love and blessings across the ethers and the miles, and I shall see you in the next episode. Bye for now.